Have you ever felt a creeping distance in your relationship? A silence that speaks louder than words? For Mark, that feeling was a constant, unwelcome guest. He and his wife Clara had been married for 5 years, but the last 2 felt like a slow drift apart. It started with small things. Late nights at her office, weekend trips with friends he wasn't invited to, and a phone that was suddenly guarded like a state secret. Mark worked from home as a graphic designer, a job that gave him flexibility but also a front row seat to the growing void in his marriage. He tried to bridge the gap. He planned date nights that were canceled at the last minute. He bought her flowers that wilted on the counter, unnoticed. He'd ask about her day, only to receive vague one-word answers while her eyes remained glued to her phone screen. The suspicion began as a whisper in the back of his mind and grew into a roaring accusation. He started noticing the signs everyone warns you about. The sudden interest in her appearance, the new, expensive perfume, the secretive smiles at her phone. He hated the person he was becoming, a man who checked phone records and scrolled through her social media, looking for clues. Every like from an unfamiliar man's name felt like a small betrayal. Every late-night text sent his heart racing with anxiety. He confronted her once, his voice trembling. "Clara, is there someone else?" She had looked at him, her eyes wide with what he thought was shock, but now he recognized as carefully crafted innocence. "Don't be ridiculous, Mark," she had scoffed. "I'm just busy with work. You're being paranoid." He wanted to believe her. He truly did. So, he buried his doubts and told himself he was the problem. Maybe he was being too needy, too insecure. The breaking point came on their 5th anniversary. Mark had spent a week planning the perfect evening. He booked a table at the restaurant where they had their first date and even bought her a beautiful necklace she'd been admiring for months. That afternoon she called. "Mark, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice rushed. "Something huge has come up at work. A deadline got moved up. I have to stay late. We'll have to postpone." The excuse was so familiar, so worn out, that Mark felt a cold numbness spread through him. He didn't argue. He just said, "Okay," and hung up. He sat in their silent living room, the gift box heavy in his hand, the reservation confirmation email mocking him from his laptop screen. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that she wasn't at work. Fueled by a cocktail of despair and determination, Mark did something he never thought he would. Hired a private investigator. Felt sordid, a betrayal of the vows they had once shared, but he needed to know the truth. Couldn't live in this limbo of suspicion any longer. The investigator, a discreet man named Mr. Harris, was efficient and professional. A week later, he called Mark to his office. The manila envelope he slid across the desk felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Mark's hand shook as he opened it. Inside were photographs. Photos of Clara, laughing with another man, holding his hand as they walked through a park, kissing him outside a small, unfamiliar apartment building. The man was handsome, well-dressed, the kind of man Mark always felt inadequate next to. The pain was sharp and blinding, a physical blow that knocked the air from his lungs. It was real. His worst fears weren't fears at all. They were his reality. Mr. Harris cleared his throat, bringing Mark back from his spiral of pain. "There's something else, Mr. Collins," he said, his tone gentle. "Something you need to know about the man." He pushed another document across the table. It was a background check. Mark scanned the page, his eyes blurry with tears. The man's name was Alex, a successful investment banker. But that wasn't what made Mark's blood run cold. It was the address listed under Alex's name. It was the same apartment building where Clara's younger sister Jenna lived. Jenna, who had moved to the city a year ago. Jenna, who Clara was supposedly helping get settled, spending countless weekends at her place. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The weekend trips, the late-night calls for sisterly advice, the shared inside jokes he never understood. It wasn't just a random affair. It was a tangled web of deceit involving her own sister. Mark went home, his mind a whirlwind of betrayal and anger. He spread the photos out on the coffee table, a grim tableau of his shattered marriage. When Clara walked in, humming a cheerful tune, she froze. Her eyes darted from the photos to Mark's stone-cold face, and the color drained from hers. The performance was over. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Explain what, Clara?" he asked, his own voice eerily calm. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months. Or should we talk about Alex? Does Jenna enjoy your little double dates?" The mention of her sister's name made Clara flinch as if struck. The fight that followed was ugly and raw. The dam of unspoken resentment broke, flooding their home with years of frustration and hurt. She cried, she begged, she accused him of pushing her away, of being distant and uninvolved. He listened, but the words were meaningless. The trust was not just broken, it was annihilated. In the end, there was nothing left to say. Divorce was the only path forward. The process was painful, forcing them to divide a life they had built together. Mark sold the house, unable to stand the memories that haunted every room. He moved into a small apartment downtown, focusing on his work and trying to piece his life back together. He cut off all contact with Clara, and by extension, her family. The betrayal was too deep to even consider forgiveness. He spent months wrestling with grief and anger. He'd often think about Clara's final accusation that he was the distant one. Had he been? Had his quiet nature and focus on his home-based work created a void she felt the need to fill? The thought tormented him. He started therapy, needing an unbiased perspective to help him sort through the wreckage of his marriage and his mind. Slowly, with time and professional help, Mark began to heal. He realized that while he might not have been a perfect husband, her choices were her own. He wasn't responsible for her deceit. One evening, about a year after the divorce, Mark was working late in a coffee shop when a woman approached his table. "Mark, is that you?" He looked up and was surprised to see an old college friend, Sarah. They hadn't seen each other in years. They talked for hours, catching up on life, careers, and everything in between. It was easy, natural. For the first time in a long time, Mark felt a spark of connection, a glimmer of hope. He found himself smiling, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Sarah was kind, funny, and refreshingly honest. As they talked, Mark realized something profound. All that time, he had thought the problem in his marriage was physical distance. Clara being out, him being home, thought if he could just close that gap, everything would be fine. But he was wrong. The real distance wasn't measured in miles. It was measured in honesty, in trust, in emotional intimacy. Clara's heart had left the marriage long before her body ever did. Her affair wasn't a symptom of their distance. It was the cause. With Sarah, there was no distance. Their connection was built on shared laughter and open conversation. Mark learned that true closeness has nothing to do with being in the same room and everything to do with being on the same page. He learned that a healthy relationship isn't about avoiding problems, but about facing them together with honesty and respect. His journey was painful, but it led him to a place of profound self-awareness and eventually to a new, healthier love. He finally understood that you can't force someone's heart to stay close. You can only offer your own, openly and honestly, and hope they choose to do the same. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content. Your support means the world to us.